new era dawns in 2022, a new platform for our drivers with Gran Turismo 7, a new circuit here today with Watkins Glen, and new challenges throughout 2022 with the start of our World Series. Welcome along, my name is Tom Brooks. Alongside me to guide you through the action throughout this year is Jimmy Broadbent, and we are very much looking forward to kicking things off with the Manufacturers' Cup here today. Now, Jimmy, of course, the 2022 calendar, slightly different to what we've seen in the past. Talk us through it.
Yeah, of course. So today you are here for the Manufacturers' Cup, and tomorrow we have Nations' Cup as well, so double the action. Then at the end of the month, the one that I'm looking forward to, our first World Series Showdown event, and that is at Salzburg, live and in person. It feels like I think it's been nearly 2 years, or over 2 years since our last one of those, so great to be back in person again. A few more events starting around September and October online, and then before we get to our climax of the year in November, the World Finals at Monaco. It's not a bad lineup.
No, we live quite a nice life in that respect, don't we? Watkins Glen is the venue here today then. This is a brand new circuit on Gran Turismo 7 for the Manufacturers' Cup. Group 3 machines for our drivers. You can see there 14 laps for them to compete with over the course of the race, and single lap qualifying was the format for them as well. So looking forward to seeing what this is going to mean. You can see racing hard, intermediate and wet tyres available. There is a mandatory pit stop for them in this race as well. But of course, it's all well and good us talking about the circuit. Let's have a closer look, shall we, at the driver lineup for this year. Igor Fraga remains with Toyota, Jose Serrano with Porsche, Lucas Benelli with Mercedes, Hafidi with Nissan, Tapai with Jaguar, Ryu Kamata with BMW, Roberto Sternberg with Volkswagen, Takuma Miyazono with Subaru, Adam Wilk, the Australian, with Aston Martin, and Nicky Romero with Genesis. They are a brand new manufacturer for this year, and Jimmy, we're looking forward to seeing what they're going to bring to the party.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a challenge for Romero and for Genesis, because everybody else are in cars they've driven for a very long time. Everyone's very established at this point, and Genesis are coming in as a newcomer with very little experience. So they do have Nicky Romero driving for them. He's been around for a while. We know he's very quick on his day as well, so definitely one to watch out for, but it's going to be tough. The competition here is very fierce, and coming in from pretty much nothing is going to be challenging for Genesis and for Romero.
Yeah, absolutely right. Well, we're going to give you an onboard look at the Watkins Glen circuit in just a couple of moments after this.
Pues para esta temporada la verdad va a ser un reto bastante complicado porque el rendimiento de Toyota y Subaru es muy fuerte, pero bueno, me siento muy motivado de hacerlo muy bien con Porsche.
The launch of GT7, I'm very thrilled to be part of the first online series event representing Aston Martin. Love the brand, luxury cars, big V12 engines, I love the sound and the noise of it.
I'm really excited to be the first ever driver to take part on the Manufacturers' Cup with Genesis. I think I can have a really good performance here because the car has very strong capability, like its power and its handling, and I can beat other drivers no matter how tough they are.
マニアックチャラーズカップは、スバルの代表として本当に初年度の、2018年からもう今年で5年連続になるので、そういった意味では非常に嬉しく思ってますし、結果という部分では一昨年はチャンピオン取れたんですけど、それ以外はちょっといい成績残していないので、今年も、2回目のチャンピオンというところを目指して頑張っていこうと思っています。
So there, we're on board here at Watkins Glen for a look at the circuit. Brand new to GT7, of course, now down to T1 for the first time with Nicky Romero with the Genesis. T1, very important to the circuit because now, look, we have a massive acceleration section up the hill here. In these cars, it's not even a list, but in older cars, of course, this was an absolutely terrifying section of circuit. And now we get ready, taking the shortest line possible, coming up to the bus stop. So Romero's going to go to the left-hand side of the circuit to prepare for this. It's a downshift here and a little light tap of the brake. Use the downforce of these Group 3 cars. They're very easy to get that wrong, but then immediately you have to set yourself up for this very long right-hander. This can burn the front left tyre if you're too aggressive through here. And now the elevation, we go downhill into the boot section of the course, and I want to try and go into the inside as soon as possible here. That's where all the camber is. That's where all the grip's going to be. Let the car run out again. And now we come up to the next right-hander. Another cambered corner. You want to try and attack this one quite early. Again, come into the inside, almost hug that curb, try and use it to run the car around. Watch out for this barrier on the left. It comes out a lot quicker than you think it does. And now we're into the second half of the circuit. We're going back downhill now, downhill braking, so be careful. Don't brake too late here, but use to understeer off. You can use just a little bit of the exit here, not too much, of course. Track limit's very tight in Gran Turismo, and now a very, very tricky uphill left-hander. The road falls away from you on the right here, and that wall on the right is just willing to greet you at any possible opportunity. Now, very fast left-hander, just a little bit of speed being scrubbed off there by the turning. Now for the last corner, very important for lap time, run the car over to the wall, and that's Nicky Romero's attempt at his qualifying run. What sort of time are we going to be from Nicky Romero? He comes in at, say, 1:44.0, nearly into the 43. So not a bad initial run there for Genesis, their first time out on circuit.
Here's Adam Wilt then in the Aston Martin. Single lap qualifying for our drivers, just to remind you as well. His time was half a second down, and he carries that right through. Is half a second slower. Takuma Miyazono with the Subaru BRZ in 2022. A new car on the grid for them. What are they going to be able to do? He was a little bit down in the penultimate sector as he comes to the line. Can he make up that time? Yes, he can. The first driver into the 1:43s. Miyazono provisionally fastest for now.
Yeah, that Subaru really quick in those medium speed corners. They just grabbed a little bit of time over Romero. Here comes Sternberg in the VW Beetle. Time wasn't great from him, goes into fourth provisionally. Here is Kamata in the M6, bit of an older car in BMW's lineup now, but still quick in its own right and good enough for third. Only just slower than Romero there in the Genesis. Now, a little bit of time before our next drivers come across the line. We have a Fidi here. Now, the GTR historically has always been a bit of a weapon in a straight line, and guess what? Watkins Glen has in spades. It's straight lines. So this GTR is probably going to have a fairly nice time through here. Here's Benelli as well. In the AMG. The Mercedes being one of those brands that's always been somewhere near the top, although I'd say last year they sort of fell off a little bit.
Yeah, the balance of performance changed hands a little bit for Lucas Benelli and for the AMG team in total, so we're keen to see what they are going to be able to do in 2022, see whether the balance of performance has changed back in their favour as well. And what about Jose Serrano, that Porsche 911? It's always been there and thereabouts, and I'm keen to see if the Spaniard is going to be able to pull things out of the bag. You can see there, he's only warming up at the moment, but yeah, it's really, really exciting to see them pushing the limits, because you can see not a lot of runoff available at all at Watkins Glen here.
Yeah, backing the Porsche into a corner is one way to warm your tyres. Also, probably a good way to end up in the barrier. I've done that a few times at Watkins Glen. Very easy to get that wrong. So we're on board now, Adam Tapai. He's a long-term driver at Jaguar, so knows this car back to front. He's putting a lap time for us. What's it going to be? It's a 44.5, so good enough for middle of the road, which unfortunately is sort of where we're used to seeing Adam Tapai. GTR currently up, won the attempt on Miyazono going into the last couple of corners. Can he carry that to the line? He does, only just though, by 1,000th. Nissan ahead of Subaru there, so very close to the top.
Very nice indeed. Lucas Benelli didn't have a particularly brilliant third sector. Where is he going to go? It's only fifth quickest in the Mercedes. Likewise, Jose Serrano, we saw him backing it in and pushing the limit on this lap. He was kind of warming himself up in that first sector. Now has gathered things up, but only goes eighth quickest, some 0.7 of a second adrift. One more driver ready to take to the line. It's Igor Fraga. He was nearly 0.3 up in the final sector, and he aims it out of the final corner. Really strong exit there. Igor Fraga to the line, and it's pole position then in the Toyota for round one of the Manufacturers' Cup in 2022. So Igor Fraga and Toyota take first blood. Hafidi will join him on the front row of the grid. Miyazono and Romero row 2, Kamata and Benelli row 3. Jaguar with Adam Tapai and Aston Martin with Adam Wilk on the next row. Jose Serrano for Porsche and Roberto Sternberg completing our 10-driver strong grid. Well, don't forget that you can find out everything about Gran Turismo 7 and the Gran Turismo World Series on gran-turismo.com. And you can also follow us on the usual social channels as well, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and TikTok, where you can also vote for your Michelin Driver of the Day.
And you'll also find details of our new Predictor game. So if you want to try and predict who the winners will be in the Showdown event in Salzburg next week, you can enter via the in-game news section or the banner on the GT7 world map for the chance to win some in-game credits. So best of luck.
Well, it certainly has been a long time coming, but we're back in action in 2022 for the Gran Turismo World Series. Here we are then, ready to go for the first Manufacturers' Cup race of the year. And here is how our grid is going to line up. It's Igor Fraga with a brilliant pole position for Toyota. Hafidi lines up in the Nissan alongside him on the front row of the grid. Takuma Miyazono with Subaru heads row 2, and he has got Nicky Romero for the brand new Genesis team alongside him. Then it is Ryu Kamata for BMW in 5th place, with Lucas Benelli lining up P6 for Mercedes. Adam Tapai, the Hungarian driver for Jaguar, lines up P7, and the Australian Adam Wilk for Aston Martin alongside him. The final row is Jose Serrano for Porsche and Roberto Sternberg in the Volkswagen Beetle, completing our 10-driver-strong grid ahead of the 14-lap race, Jimmy.
Yeah, of course, a lot of drivers on that hard compounder tyre. It's going to be a rolling start, and Igor Fraga is actually probably in the wrong position because he's right at the front. He's going to be giving a draft to all the cars behind him. So, pole position on circuit for the start of the race, but that might not be ideal going down to the bus stop for the first time.
Well, just a reminder, of course, that all the drivers have to make one mandatory pit stop in this race. There is only racing hard tyres available for our drivers as well, so they'll make a stop from the hards, go on to the hards, and I'm sure it'll be very exciting. But here we are then, ready to go. Manufacturers' Cup 2022 World Series is underway here at Watkins Glen. Igor Fraga leads the field down towards the first corner from Hafidi, from Takuma Miyazono as we come in towards turn number 1. So Hafidi closing up then on the brakes, but of course this being a rolling start, the field relatively spread out, so we shouldn't expect any overtaking moves through the first couple of corners at least. But once they get a bit of heat into their tyres and brakes, maybe that's when we'll see drivers beginning to strike, as we ride on board here with Kamata looking quite close onto the back of Nicky Romero here and the Genesis. Then is he going to be able to launch a move as he goes into the slipstream, pulls to the outside, then as we come down the back straight into the chicane, has to back out of it, not quite close enough to mount an attack at the moment.
Yeah, probably his best chance to get that done there, but of course it seems to Romero just about covering that off a little bit closer, coming in to the long right-hander down the hill. You can see second and third also quite close together. That's Hafidi and Miyazono. We're still following Kamata for now in the BMWs. We come into the downhill section. So here is Miyazono there, of course, our 2020 Manufacturers' Cup champion, our Subaru. So we saw Miyazono earlier on saying very much he'd like to try and get another championship for Subaru. So we'll see how he does. Really, right now running in third behind Hafidi, but that Subaru in a straight line struggling compared to the GTR a little bit.
That's not the first time we've seen that as well. Subaru's been really quick in the corners, but has always struggled traditionally with straight line speed, and that does seem to be the case for him here so far as well. That Nissan's a bit of a rocket, and he's just able to give himself enough of an advantage to not be under any immediate threat from Miyazono, but certainly the Subaru looking a little bit quicker in the sort of mid to lower speed corners. The traction on that BRZ is looking pretty handy. You can see Miyazono then going through into the right-hander, and he's coming into the pit lane, so he's making his stop at the end of the first lap. So he's going to drop right to the back of the field then here. He's making his mandatory pit stop, going to try and run a bit of clean air. Adam Tapai also coming in at the end of lap 1.
That's really interesting, because you'd think you want to try and stay in the train and try and take the slipstream around here, because the draft is worth a lot of time around Watkins Glen. You know, especially if you're in a Subaru, which is slower on the straights, you've been dragged around a little bit. So I'm interested to see if this is going to work out. We say this all the time when Miyazono does anything like this, so we'll see what he does. Maybe it'll be a master stroke, maybe it'll be awful, but that is Takuma Miyazono's strategy in a nutshell, really. So Igor Fraga currently leading the race from Hafidi in the Nissan, unable to break away, it seems. The gap very much around 2 to 3 tenths. Miyazono then out the pit lane on his own. It wasn't the only person to pit though. Adam Tapai did pit as well. The Jaguar, who's just behind, just currently out of slipstream range.
Yeah, Tapai qualified down in 7th place, so that Jaguar not quick necessarily in qualifying trim. I wonder if he's going to be able to latch on to the back of him as we cross back to this battle for 7th place, as Sternberg sends it down the inside of Adam Wilk. So it's Volkswagen ahead of Aston Martin. Nice clean move there into that left-hander for Sternberg, getting the move done, moving up into 7th place. His next target will be Jose Serrano in the Porsche, who is about 8 tenths of a second up the road.
Yeah, Wilk was very kind there. I think maybe a little bit too kind. It is early on in the race. Maybe he wants to be in the draft as well, but just seemed like he sort of gave that one up without really a fight. So yeah, 7th and 8th has fallen off the back a little bit. We're now on board with Wilk, looking at the back of Sternberg and the VW. In front, of course, on board this Aston Martin. Says he loves the Aston, he loves the luxury car brand, but right now not having a great race. A little bit sideways there, and I told you that corner there really difficult to get out of. It's a low speed corner in a low gear. If you make a little mistake, you have to gather it up, and unfortunately there's a wall there waiting to give you a nice big hug if you do that. So Lucas Benelli coming into the pit lane for his pit stop now.
Yep, and not the only driver that's coming to the pits at the end then of this lap as well, because Roberto Sternberg, I should say, also into the pit lane then. So they're making their stops from the hard tyres onto their next compound, of course, of hard tyres, the only tyre available here for the manufacturer series. So that is 4 drivers who have now made their stops as we are now on lap 3. And it's the status quo at the front. Igor Fraga running a good race, but as you said earlier on, not able to build enough of a gap. 0.3 of a second it sat at pretty much for the entirety of this one. Benelli comes out ahead of Adam Tapai as well.
That is interesting. I mean, I kind of thought that'd be the case anyway, to be honest, because he was ahead of him when he pitted. I'm just looking at the fastest lap times at the moment. It seems the fastest lap, from what I can see, currently belongs to Romero. So he is he's out on circuit in that draft. So what I'm looking for really is Miyazona to go quicker. The lap time we have up there, I don't think is the one that's actually done at the moment. So we'll see what his next lap is. But if Miyazona's strategy is going to work with the early pit stop, and those, of course, who have pitted early, then they need to be doing some good lap times now, because otherwise the guys in front are getting free time by just sitting in the tow.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because we talk about strategy a lot in these races, and though, of course, there's only one compound of tyre, it's going to be really important to see who pits where if you drop out of that slipstream train effectively, and that could really, compromise your race, couldn't it?
But you have to remember, this is a brand new set of physics for these guys in Gran Turismo 7, so they're really having to adapt to the new challenges here, because these guys have been around for a while driving, of course, in GT Sport, but with GT7 the tyres are a bit different, the way things wear are different, the way the cars feel are different, and getting all that done and getting all that done properly is important for your race. So we see there Romero now moving up into second as Hafidi comes into the pits with the GTR. Great car, the GTR, of course. I've no bias at all from me.
Good to see that we're still on a new platform and some things never change.
Exactly. This and forever. But yeah, interesting to see him pit now, because what we want to see now is where Miyazono comes out in relation to Hafidi in the GTR. So it's coming around the corner now, and I don't see. Oh, there you go. So interesting. Miyazono comes out ahead of Hafidi. So that's actually worked out for Takuma Miyazono, who's just set the fastest lap too, a 44.9 in clean air. So as usual, he makes us look like idiots up here in the commentary booth, and does a strategy I think won't work, and then it's working for him at the moment. But of course, he was earliest to switch onto that tyre, so come the end of the race, he's going to have the most tyre wear.
Yeah, new tyre model in Gran Turismo 7 as well. Soft tyres wear a lot quicker now. Hard tyres have got a bit of a plus point with longevity, and as you said, of course, there is a 4 times tyre multiplier in this race as well. So 1 lap is the equivalent to 4 laps. Of course, Miyazono's done a lap longer on those tyres compared to Hafidi, so they are going to be a little bit more worn towards the end of this one, and we'll have to see how it all works out. But if they're running as close as they are before the end of this race, if Hafidi's there, you can guarantee he's going to try and make a move.
Yeah, so for some context for you guys right now, Miyazono on the alternate strategy, putting on lap 1, is on a 44.9 on this last lap, whereas our leader Igor Fraga, is on a 45.7, so 8 tenths faster.
Yeah, really, really impressive stuff there for him as we ride on board here then with Igor Fraga coming through into the final sector. Fraga just continuing on his normal lap. It's pretty easy to tell when a driver is going to pit here, because of course you can see the pit line comes through that final corner, and drivers have to go into that pit line as soon as the opportunity opens. So as soon as you can see the pit lane line, you have to go into that. You can't decide to go around the final corner and then dart in at the last moment. That's the regulations that everybody has to play for. Makes it a little bit easier for us to follow here in the commentary box as well. Meanwhile, Igor Fraga then says he's just increased his advantage to just around about a second over Nicky Romero. So I wonder whether that Genesis is a little bit hard on its tyres compared to Fraga, because of course it's a new manufacturer. Maybe the balance of performance hasn't quite worked out. Maybe the team haven't got the right setup compared to the likes of the Toyota, which of course they'll have had data from, albeit of course on a previous platform with GT Sport.
I mean, you say that, but his last lap, Romero, was actually quicker than Igor Fraga by about a tenth and a bit. So the pace is definitely there. We'll just have to see what he can do with it. We're on board with Takuma Miyazono showing us the right way to go through the bus stop there. Basically, full commitment and hope it sticks. A mantra that I live by most of the time, and usually it doesn't stick. Igor Fraga still leading the race. A lot of experience leading races does Igor Fraga. He knows how to control the race from the front, and at this point, it's all about just being careful, being consistent, getting those lap times in, not letting the pressure from behind phase you. And as we can see from Igor Fraga's driver camera, he looks like, well, he just looks like a robot when he drives, doesn't he? He doesn't blink. There's no emotion.
Classic racing driver, isn't it? Everyone says, oh, we'd love to be able to see behind the helmet and behind the eyes. This is what you'd see, just nothing.
There are no thoughts in that head other than race, car, drive. That's all there is in there right now. But that's what you've got to be. It's what makes a good driver, both in real life and in sim. Of course, Fraga's had ample experience in both, and now coming into the pit lane, really maximising that pit entry as well. As you said, you've got to make sure you're inside that that yellow line there on the way in, otherwise you'll get slapped with a penalty. So Romero coming in at the same time, same strategy as Igor Fraga. So now we get to see how Miyazono's done. Here he comes, we're on board, and again another fastest lap from him last time, a 44.7 on the last lap. This lap, let's see what he's done around here as well. Not a fastest lap, but still very quick, only just slower than his best lap of the race. So he's been putting in fantastic pace. He should be leading here.
Let's see where he comes out then. So Miyazono does emerge ahead of Igor Fraga, and he does emerge ahead of Nicky Romero. This is Fraga versus Mehdi Hafidi then side by side. So Nissan versus Toyota, and Hafidi then, who got the undercut, has managed to make it work against Igor Fraga, and now is up into effectively a net second place, because of course the drivers ahead, the top three, have not made their pit stop. So Fraga needs to retaliate as quickly as he possibly can on Hafidi, because of course the disadvantage here for Fraga is that his tyres are going to be a little bit colder than Hafidi's, who will be up to working operating temperature. So he needs to get past and make sure that Hafidi doesn't clear off into the distance.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much it now. This is the challenge with different strategies, is you sometimes find yourself maybe at a phase of your strategy not quite where you want to be, but you can see the contrasting styles there as Romero looks to the inside, then to the outside of Igor Fraga. He won't make a move around there, I can tell him that now for free, but you can see Igor Fraga looking like, again, nothing in there. Well, Nicky Romero is fighting for his life on that wheel down the bottom. It looks to the inside now of Igor Fraga. A great place to get by here if you can get on the brakes there. Heavy on the brakes up the inside. He's alongside the rear panel. Now they're side by side coming up that hill. And of course the next corner is a left-hander. Igor Fraga doesn't have the advantage there. Really drives him out to the outside. Gives him no room. Runs in deep into the corner. Sits on the apex. That's textbook defending there from Fraga. And Romero's going to have to try again next lap.
Yeah, he tried to get a stronger exit out of there, didn't he, Romero, after having his entry on the corner compromised. But of course, whilst they've been squabbling, it's allowed Lucas Benelli to close right up onto the back. So from being a two-way battle, set to possibly become a three-way scrap here, because all three of these drivers have now made their pit stop. We're right on board here with Romero, who's in the middle of this sandwich at the moment. As they come across the timing line and down in towards the first corner, he's having to keep a watching brief on his mirrors, because the Brazilian Benelli is getting very close behind. But of course, he needs to make sure that he's not too defensive and defending fresh air, so that Fraga isn't able to just pull out a few more tenths of a second and get away. At
this point, you're just looking forward. You're looking forward at the car you're catching, which is Igor Fraga again in that draft there. Fraga goes defensive into the bus stop, which is the right hand. Romero, though, I think is going to drive just straight past him. Here comes Benelli too. Looks to try and guard the inside at the same time. Can't quite get by. Romero up into sixth place then in the Genesis past Toyota. And now, Fraga getting a little bit sideways on the way out, just catching the grass. You can see really trying to push the limits of the track there. He's paid for the racetrack. He's going to use all of it.
Fraga then really sort of having to get his elbows out here, and unfortunately coming a cropper as well. This strategy seemingly not working out for the Toyota driver. Has lost 2 positions since he's pitted, now possibly set to lose 3 as we ride on board here then with Lucas Benelli. So through the right-hander we go. Nice clean exit out of there is going to be important. And the thing is for Benelli is that the overtaking opportunities, especially in this sort of tight, twisty midfield section, are a bit far and few between. There's a bit of a run down the straight, but Benelli, though he's got good confidence under braking, not quite close enough to mount anything of a serious challenge right now. But you can guarantee that if an opportunity presents itself, he will be going for it. So he just needs to drive his line as nicely and as smoothly as he possibly can, close up sort of half a tenth here, half a tenth there, and then try and mount a challenge into the final sector. And this onto the start-finish straight could possibly present itself as an opportunity.
What I find really interesting is we look at the difference between Fraga and Benelli on the wheel. And Benelli is constantly changing settings on his wheel, so constantly changing brake bias, maybe traction control, and just trying to get the most out of his car, maybe from fuel mix as well, as we now come into T1. Again, absolutely vital for the lap time here. And again, Fraga's in the worst place he could possibly be, which is in front, going up the hill here. So He's going to be giving the draft to Benelli. He'll come across now to take the line. Benelli's going to be forced a long way around. This is the right way to drive this part of the circuit if you are trying to defend, but not quite able to stay in front of Benelli there. The AMG just has a little bit more straight line grunt than the Toyota does, and Free goes up into 7th place. Now, whilst this is going on, the fastest man on track, do you want to take a guess who it is? It is Takuma Miyazono, who just did the fastest lap of the race. He's the only guy, he was the only guy in the 44s. Romero's just joined him, but 44.6 on the last lap compared to these guys squabbling in the mid 45s. So although only on 4th on track at the moment, he is catching Adam Wilk in the Aston Martin hand over fist, and when these guys pit, I have no doubt that Miyazono will be leading this race.
Certainly will be, yeah. That's pretty much given now at this point. 3.2 seconds is the gap that he has over Hafidi. So the top 3 in this race have not made their pit stops. It surely won't be too long before they are considering it, because the tyres will be coming towards the end of their shelf life, and it'll be Nicky Romero, who though sits in 6th place now, will inherit that podium, I'm sure, once it has all played out. Into that left-hander, really nice smooth inputs there at the steering wheel. It's got an interesting driving sort of position though, has he? Sort of hunches over, as it were.
You say, like, you see how he puts himself over the wheel like that. You tend not to go for that style when you're driving. It's almost as if the wheels are a little bit too far away from him, but you know what, if it works, it works. I can tell you with all confidence that if I raced him, he'd make me look stupid. So doesn't matter how what your style is. If it works, then go for it. But right now doing a good job on the Genesis's debut here in the Gran Turismo Manufacturers Cup. So good to see them doing so well. Of course, I think he has the potential to get onto the back of Hafidi and maybe get by, but I think that Miyazono is at this point just uncatchable. He's got to make a mistake. It makes you wonder if he made a mistake in qualifying, because a single lap pace is so much quicker than anybody else. I wonder how he qualified so low.
Yeah, it certainly is going to be a bit of a point of contention, because of course we didn't see all of those qualifying laps. We were sort of chopping and changing between all of the drivers as they were on their fast ones. So maybe, as you said, made a mistake, but certainly in race trip, maybe they just set the car up a little bit more for that. But yeah, very interested to see how it is all going to play out then here. So Nicky Romero riding on board with Still. This gives you a real good example of the undulation of this Watkins Glen circuit. So great to see it in Gran Turismo 7 as well. The first time it's ever been featured in a Gran Turismo game, and I tell you what, the team at Polyphony have done a phenomenal job of getting this just so accurate.
Yeah, it looks great. Watkins Glen is one of those circuits that I think that every title should have, so it's great to see it introduced into Gran Turismo 7 for you, of course, at home to enjoy as well. And see if you can beat our guys' times. I bet you can't. if you can, then feel free. We'll be commentating on you maybe next time. But Romero, as we're riding on board with, is catching Hafidi. I mean, I don't have to look at the time to tell you that GTR is getting bigger in our windscreen in front. So coming through these last 2 left-hands, I think this is where the GTR struggles a little bit compared to the Genesis. Now you really fire it in here, use the camber of the corner, and then the car just wander out to the wall. Let it wander, but don't let it hit the wall. that's the main
It's a
thing.
fine balance,
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah, it's the one that I struggle with.
Look at
immensely.
it. Oh, I can imagine you do. Here is Takuma Miyazono then, so the effective race leader at this point, with just under 4 laps now remaining. Of course, Kamata, Serrano and Adam Wilk have not yet made their mandatory pit stops in this race. He's had good pace though, hasn't he? And he's closing up onto the back of that Aston Martin here.
Yeah, he's really pushing too. His last lap was actually the fastest at 44.4, so really getting the most out of this Subaru is Miyazono as we go through the chicane once more. You can see leaving nothing on the table there, just dipping a tyre into the grass. But it's been a fantastic drive by Takuma Miyazono so far, and I have to say that strategy that I thought was kind of a bit scuffed, to be honest, has really paid good for him.
Yeah, really keen to see how it's going to work out. You can see he is pushing the envelope there, just trying to get that car rotated into the next series of corners, and yeah, very keen to see how this is all going to work out for him. We ride on board here with the Japanese driver. Really nice smooth driving style that he's got, and that gap between himself and Adam Wilk is definitely coming down. You should expect that though, of course, because Wilk has not made his pit stop. Those hard tyres are going to be going off a little bit more than the fresher rubber that Miyazono has got underneath him now, and he's closing up here onto the back of this Aston Martin. I would imagine what Wilk is going to do is probably come into the pit lane end of this lap, next lap or something like that, and get those tyres off, because at the moment he's just hemorrhaging time.
That's what Miazono's going to be hoping. He doesn't want to be held up by Wilk, and he has got the speed over him. If he does get held up, then these guys behind are going to be there to make advantage of that. Right now, Serrano and Kamata coming into the pit, so this is going to be a change of lead. Will come into well. He does okay, so there you go. You were right, Tom. That's the first time I've ever said that, I think.
Thank you very much.
In like 4 years. And Miazono goes up into the lead. The gap now 4.4 seconds back to Hafidi. Will Romero get out in front? I think Romero's has actually dived Hafidi behind there. Yeah, he has. Nicky Romero there up into second place. We just caught the end of that in the Genesis.
That's fantastic stuff there from Nicky Romero. That Genesis is having a great debut here. Where's Kamata going to emerge out with Tapai there as well? They're side by side on the run up the top of the hill. So it's Jaguar on the inside, BMW on the outside, and it is the Hungarian who gets ahead. Keep an eye out for Sternberg there in the background as well, as these three drivers running really close to one another as they come down the back straight in towards the bus stop chicane. Of course, Tapai has got a little bit older brother underneath him, but it's a little bit more up to operating temperature here. Oh, this is Hafidi. This is the mistake he made, and this is how Romero was able to get past. So wide out of the final corner, over the curb there for Hafidi, and here comes Nicky Romero down the inside, late on the brakes, through into second.
Yeah, just tag the wall there. You don't really need to invite Romero twice, and that was enough for him to easily get by, and just like that. I mean, it's a shame, because it's been a good race for Hafidi in that GTR. We're not used to seeing this actually run this high, so for me it's great, but for everyone else maybe not so much. But Romero by now, and he is still falling behind Miazono. The gap is still increasing, so I think Miazono's got this covered off as long as that tyre lasts his last few laps. So it's going to be the fight for second that I think hots up.
I tell you what, though, the battle for the final podium places isn't over, because Lucas Benelli has just been carefully chinking away at the armour of Hafidi here, and Hafidi, I wonder whether that has just unsettled his rhythm a little bit. Maybe he's starting to struggle with pace now, because Benelli, he's not too far adrift. There's enough time if he's able to put a few good sectors, a few laps together, and of course he is in the slipstream now, but of course on the flip side, Hafidi has the slipstream of Romero in front.
Yeah, so when everyone's got the slipstream, nobody has. That's sort of what we say. So it's all down just cornering pace here and performance from that AMG, and we know that Benelli likes to get his elbows out on occasion, so if he gets even one chance, I think you'll see him send it and have a go. Let's have a look at the sort of the gaps up here. So we're coming down the straight now. This is where we're seeing the straight line performance of all these cars together. That Genesis, I've got to say, is a rocket in a straight line. It's, even without the slipstream, it's still not having too much of an issue. And it does seem that Benelli is catching ever so slightly, but through the bus stop, look at how much more speed he carries through there than Hafidi does, and that gap suddenly comes down to 0.6 of a second.
Yeah, this is looking really exciting here for the crescendo of this race. For the final podium positions, Hafidi then, is he going to be on the back foot? Is Benelli going to have an opportunity to attack? So three drivers battling for the podium positions. Just outside of that, this is the battle for fifth place with Igor Fraga versus Jose Serrano. Fraga, of course, started on pole position. Since then, he's gone backwards, to be honest. And now the Spaniard of Serrano is looking really close behind. I tell you what, Fraga, I mean, he's going to be wondering what might have been for this race, really. They look like they had the pace in qualifying trim, but under racing conditions, Toyota haven't been there, have they?
No, they haven't. I'd say that Fraga looks frustrated, but to be fair,
he always looks like
he just looks the same as he did before anyway, so I don't really know. But you can see, though, in Serrano's eyes, just the glint of possibility, there might be a move on here for Porsche. And that Porsche, I think, in the slow speed stuff is pretty quick, but doesn't seem to have the speed in the faster corners, and that's where Fraga is kind of able to defend from now. There's still a few laps left, though, for these guys, or 2 laps now as we come across the start-finish line. There is still opportunity for that to happen, but it's, like I said, Fraga, I don't know where the pace has gone. I mean, there must have been, that must be really hard on his tyres, that Toyota.
Yeah, quite clearly. Of course, the balance performance does change a bit wide out of the first corner there for Fraga. That's going to allow Serrano to close up, and this is where, if Serrano can get a good run, he may be able to try and pounce then. So up through the run, into the left, and then the right-hander. He needs a good exit through here. He's got the advantage of the slipstream, does Jose Serrano. Is he going to have a look in towards the bus stop then? Well, Fraga's going to try and stop him as much as he can. He takes the defensive line in towards the right and the left-hander, moves over just before the braking zone, holds on to 5th place for now, does Igor Fraga, but he's certainly coming under pressure. I tell you what, though, he did get a stonking run through the mid part of that corner.
Yeah, that's insane to see how quick that Toyota is on the straight compared to the Porsche. I mean, Serrano was deep in the toe and he was just staying there. He wasn't even gaining. So if there is going to be a move made by Serrano, it's going to be under brake somewhere, because it's not going to be by drafting by. So we're seeing a big weakness to that Porsche there compared to the other cars. But that's sort of what makes the Manufacturers Series really interesting, is they are just all a little bit different. Some do better at different tracks than others. So yeah, if you're Porsche right now, you're not having a great time.
Now, the Porsche looks to be really quick actually in the sort of this part of the lap, the more technical part of it, and I wonder whether that sort of mid-engine rear drive layout is perhaps helping the traction.
Yeah, possibly. You know, I say that Watkins Glen's a bit of a glorified oval most of the time, so you know, round here a car with a bit of oomph is going to do well. But a good battle this, and Serrano's still hanging on there. I mean, I think this time last lap was a little bit closer, but you can see mid corner there, just close up a little bit. But you know, Fraga he's a clever boy. He's been racing for a long time, both in real life and in Gran Turismo, so he's going to know exactly where to put that car to keep that place.
On the final lap we go then. It's Fraga versus Serrano for the final position inside the top 5, and of course this doesn't count for any World Tour points, but it's a great battle between the two drivers, two of the very best that we have here in the GT World Series, and it's going to come down to this last lap to decide who will finish where. Serrano once again close on the rise up the top of the hill, but we know that Toyota is an absolute weapon in a straight line, and as such Serrano, despite having the slipstream, is not able to mount an attack on Fraga into the bus stop chicane. They run very close to one another, bumper to bumper, as they come through there. A little bit skittish for Fraga. That cost him a bit of time on the exit of the corner, but I think if he can place his car right here, he'll be absolutely quids in. Meanwhile, look at the man who's on the final lap, absolutely clear out in front, 3.8 seconds up the road, Takuma Miyazono. What a race it has been for him.
Yeah, he's starting to lose a bit of time to Romero, but I think he's just cruising to the end now. But Serrano is really on the edge. Fraga having to defend right on the inside now, coming into this uphill right-hander, and there's not going to be a way around the outside there, Jose, but he's going to try and get a cutback, but he just doesn't have the grunt. He cannot get out of the corner as quickly as Fraga does. No matter what he seems to be able to do, he cannot get the move done. Into the braking zone now, it's probably the best chance they both come across to defend. Fraga keeps the place for now, but Serrano's rapidly running out of time.
Yeah, this is looking really exciting between these two drivers as they come through into the final series of corners at Watkins Glen in the first race for the Manufacturers Cup. And Fraga, he's just got to place that Toyota Supra in the right positions and he will be absolutely spot on. Meanwhile, Takuma Miyazono, it is a perfect start to their Manufacturers Cup for Subaru and for the Japanese driver. He wins here at Watkins Glen for round 1 of the GT World Series. It's a debut podium for Genesis with Nicky Romero in second, third for Hafidi, and look at this, side by side between Fraga and Serrano, separated by just a couple of hundredths of a second, right to the line. That was hugely exciting here. What a way to start the season. What a result for these guys as well. Takuma Miyazono and Subaru finish on top. Nicky Romero and Genesis come home second, and Hafidi and Nissan come home third. They take 3 points into the showdown. Benelli and Mercedes in fourth, Toyota and Fraga in fifth, just ahead of Serrano to the line, and Porsche in sixth, with Tapai and Jaguar seventh, Kamata and BMW in eighth, Sternberg and Volkswagen in ninth, and Adam Wilk, the Australian, driving for Aston Martin, finishing inside the top 10. Well then, here are the podium positions. It is third place for Nissan and for Mehdi Hafidi, the Frenchman. A great start to their 2022 campaign. Nicky Romero, the Spaniard, comes home P2 for Genesis, a new manufacturer this year, and what a way to kick off their season. But no doubting the winners, Takuma Miyazono from Japan wins for Subaru here for round 1 at Watkins Glen.
戦略については、まあもちろんレース前にいろいろ考えていたんですけど、予選が、3番手っていうところで、前にですね、トヨタと日産がいたと思うんですけど、まだですね、こう、スバルの、こう、BRZ の方が、燃費が少し分があるの、燃費が少し分があるのかなっていうふうには思っていたので、まあそういう意味ではレースペースっていうところではちょっと絶対的な自信を今回は持っていたので、まあ、1周目に入ってしまえば前の2台をかわせるんじゃないかなと思って、はい、レース中にそこは考えて、1周目にピットインしました。まあ、燃料については、まあ、基本的にずっと残りが何%かっていうのは見てたんですけど、やっぱり2周目3周目で前に出るためにちょっと燃料を使ってしまったので、まあ、最後ちょっと帳尻を合わせるのが大変だったんですけど、まあ、でも 序盤から中盤にかけてある程度マージンを築けたので、結果としてはある程度の差をつけて1位でゴールすることができて、よかったかなというふうに思っています。約2年半ぶりのライブイベントが行われるということで、しかもザルツブルグレッドブルハンガー7っていうのは本当に素晴らしい場所ですし、今まで自分は2回参加させていただいてるんですけれども、本当一番と言っても過言ではないぐらい好きなワールドツアーの中で好きな場所なので、そういったところに参加できるっていうのは非常に楽しみです。で、やっぱり今回の優勝っていうのは今年の流れっていうところでは非常にいい結果だというふうには思っていますし、スバルの代表としてフラインの、ワールドツアーに出るっていうのは、2019年以来になると多分思うんですけど、本当久々なんですけど、そこはあまり気にせずに、今回の流れのまま、次も3人がきっちりとこう、チームの力を発揮してで結果として優勝できればなというふうに思っています。もちろんオンラインの、家から参加するっていう環境とオフラインで皆さんに見守られながら参加するっていう環境は全然違うんですけど、個人的にはやっぱりオフラインで皆さんに直接応援されながらっていう形の方がすごくモチベーションも出ますし、参加していてワクワクするような気分になれますし、当然緊張っていうところはあるんですけど、一回その走り出してしまえば、そこは関係なくなりますし、それ以上にやっぱりいろんな方の前で走れるっていうワクワク感の方がはるかに勝っているかなと思います。
Well, don't forget you can vote for your Michelin Driver of the Day on our social media channels. Round 1 of the Nations Cup for the GT World Series comes here tomorrow, and then we're at Salzburg for the showdown in July on the 30th and the 31st. From Jimmy Broadbent and myself, Tom Brooks, thank you, and we'll see you then.